House on Wednesday overwhelmingly approved legislation to end the federal government's bulk collection of phone records, exerting enormous pressure on Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, the Senate Majority Leader, who insists that dragnet sweeps continue in defiance of many of those in the Republican Party. Under the bipartisan bill, which passed 338 to 88, the Patriot Act would be changed to prohibit bulk collection of the National Security Agency of metadata charting telephone calls made by Americans. However, while the House version of the bill would take government out of the collection business, it would not deny it access to the information. It would be in the hands of the private sector. Almost certainly, telecommunications companies like AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint, which already keep records for billing purposes and hold on to them for 18 months to 5 years. So for the NSA, which has been internally questioning the cost-effectiveness of bulk collection for years, the bill would make the agency's searches somewhat less efficient, but it would not wipe them out. With the approval of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, the spy agencies, or the FBI, could request data relevant to an investigation. Corporate executives have said that while they would have to reform some data to satisfy government search requirements, they could most likely provide data quickly. The legislation would also bar bulk collection of records using other tools like so-called national security letters, which are a kind of administrative subpoena. The near unanimity of the House is not reflected in the Senate, where a bipartisan group that backs the House bill faces opposition from Mitch McConnell and a small but powerful group of defense hawks who want no change, and from another faction led by Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, that is pressing for even greater restrictions of data collection. A compromise of some form must be reached before June 1st, when the provision of the Patriot Act that follows the NSA dragnet expires. I think we have found an equilibrium on how to protect both security and privacy, said Representative Adam B. Schiff of California, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. These issues are not going away. I think the fact that the public is becoming much more united on how we balance these dual imperatives has ripened in a very constructive way. The debate over the issue, which intensified after the surveillance efforts were exposed by Edward J. Snowden, was complicated by a federal appeals court ruling last week that found the NSA's bulk collection of phone records illegal, and by the coming expiration of the Patriot Act next month. Some senators would prefer that the Patriot Act be extended for a short period while the Senate works through the issue, but it is not clear whether the House or the Senate would let that happen. And now for a segment I like to call Too Many Facts. I'm going to list too many facts for you to handle. In 2007, a group of college students drove the speed limit, 55 miles per hour, on the I-28 and backed up traffic for miles. Jean-Francois Vidot deserted the French army twice, impersonated an officer, a nobleman, and a nun, escaped from prison several times, once assisting another convict, and was sentenced to death, all before he became the father of modern criminology. When King George III found out Washington had given up command of the Revolutionary Army and was planning to return to his farm after the war, he said, if he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world. Roosevelt wanted a second Bill of Rights, an economic Bill of Rights, which would guarantee employment with a living wage, food, clothing, and leisure, farm rights to a fair income, freedom from unfair competition and monopolies, housing, medical care, Social Security, education, and others, but it never materialized. According to a survey conducted in 2011, USA ranked third in the world in liking USA. Japan and Kenya ranked first and second, respectively. Neil deGrasse Tyson tried updating his Wikipedia to say he wasn't an atheist, but people kept putting it back. A farmer from York, England, noted that his goats produced up to half a pint more milk when listening to Mariah Carey's famous Christmas track, All I Want for Christmas Is You. Annually, Paris experiences nearly 20 cases of mental breakdowns from visiting Japanese tourists, whom cannot reconcile the disparity between the Japanese popular image of Paris and the reality of Paris. Up until 1977, an IQ of 70 or lower meant sterilization was appropriate in North Carolina. According to data of the military expenditures in 2013, if USA had cuts to its military budget by 70%, it would still have the largest military budget in the world. Reagan, suffering from Alzheimer's, would clean his pool for hours without knowing his Secret Service agents were replenishing the leaves in the pool. Costco sells approximately 60 million rotisserie chickens every year. Jerningham Wakefield, a New Zealand politician, was such a notorious drunk that his friends would lock him in Parliament overnight to keep him sober enough to vote the next day. However, this failed in 1872 when his political enemies began lowering bottles of whiskey down the chimney. In 2014, 3 people in a flight simulator died after a real plane crashed into the Kansas Flight Safety Center. The astronauts aboard Skylab 4 went on strike for a day because they felt overwhelmed by the demands of mission control. They used this time to look out the window and think. The Dutch East India Company was the most valuable company in history. It was worth 78 million Dutch guilders. Adjusted to dollars, it was worth $7.4 trillion. Loneliness is processed in the same part of the brain as physical pain. A blind American man taught himself to navigate using echolocation. His hobbies include hiking and mountain biking, and he has now trained over 500 students in his tongue click technique. Niccolò Paganini, regarded by many to be the greatest violin virtuoso ever, was so good that he was thought to be the son of the devil or to have sold his soul for talent. Therefore, he was forced to publish his mother's letters to him in order to prove that he had human parents. Where the Wild Things Are was originally Where the Wild Horses Are, before Maurice Sendak realized he didn't know how to draw horses. There is an alternate universe where Bruce Wayne died instead of his parents, causing his father, Thomas Wayne, to become Batman, and his mother, Martha, to go insane and become the Joker. There's a teddy bear in every Dutch police car in case something troubling happens to a child. A child. There we go. Scientists had to purge Urban Dictionary's data from IBM's Watson's memory because it learned to swear. Liechtenstein has an incarceration rate of 19 per 100,000. With a population of just 37,000, this means there are approximately 7 people in prison. The board game Monopoly has led to multiple cases of assault and murder, one of which involved best friends and an arrow to the chest. Norway's prisons are made to help you readjust to society. They don't have barred windows and have sharp knives in the kitchen. Norway believes you shouldn't have to have your freedom taken away in prison. Quetzalcoatlus, thought to be the largest flying animal in Earth's history, had a wingspan of 35 feet. It could fly up to 80 miles an hour for 7 to 10 days at altitudes of 15,000 feet with a maximum range between 8,000 and 12,000 miles. In 2010, when Tokyo officials went to congratulate the oldest man in the city on his 111th birthday, they insisted they found skeletal remains on his bed. He had been dead for 30 years, and the family was taking in the pension money he was still receiving. In Finland, you are given a top hat and a sword when you get a PhD diploma. The Grand Central Station in New York is more radioactive than a nuclear power plant due to its granite construction. The Danish government in April built an exact replica of Denmark in Minecraft. Americans invaded the country and planted flags everywhere. During the 18th century, you could pay your admissions to the zoo in London by bringing a cat or dog to feed the lions. A scientist in the 60s gave LSD to dolphins in an attempt to teach them English. There was a man who was beaten into a coma. He then woke up with no memory of his wife of 20 years, and then fell back in love with her again. There is a skyscraper in Japan that has a highway passing through its 5th, 6th, and 7th floors. A man invented shoes called No Place Like Home that have a built-in GPS system that can help you get home if you click your heels together 3 times. There is a city in Kansas called Gas. Their official motto is "Don't pass gas, stop and enjoy it." A pilot and a co-pilot never eat the same meal in case one of the meals is contaminated.